Well, welcome to Prairie Lakes Church. We are so glad that we can do this together. And remember that we are one church on many corners. And it's such a beautiful thing to be a part of this thing called Prairie Lakes. Last weekend I was in Grinnell. Hey, Grinnell. It was great to see you. So no matter where your seat is this weekend, or if you find yourself on the online campus, we're so glad you're here. And hey, if you're online, make sure you log in and sign in and say hi to Pastor Cody and his team, because here's what we know. We want you to be known, and connected people and being known are growing people. So we really want to connect with you. So if you're online only, make sure that you sign in and do that. All right, we're doing the new series. We're going to take 5 weeks, and it's a series that we're really basing small groups around. And let me just say this right now. If you haven't gotten the group for this series, you can still do it. Just go to your campus pastor or somebody on your team there and just say, hey, I want to get in a group. I know it's late, but I want to get in a group. I think it'll really be worth it for you, really worth it, because we want you to be connected relationally. That's one of those next steps that we lay on the foundation of Jesus. So we're in this series called Worth the Risk, okay? And I want you to know this, that you can go to the website, and when you go to the website, go to the Sermon Study Guide. And here's a picture of it right here. But in the Sermon Study Guide, man, it's there every week for every message that we give. And this one is really designed for not only individual use, but this is the group study guide too. So we really want you to take advantage of that. And I'm excited about doing the adventure and using the QR code on there. It's something kind of unique for this series. So jump and do that. All right. So when we talk about Worth the Risk, here's where we're going with the series, is this. If you're a follower of Jesus, listen, I know not everybody's a follower of Jesus here, but I know that but if you're a follower of Jesus, and what we mean by that is if you've made the step over the faith line and you're trusting Jesus, you said, you're my only hope, you confess that you're a sinner, and you believe that he's the King and the Messiah, and you make that step over the faith line, you become his follower. And now, there's phases and stages to being a follower, right? Just like in any kind of relationship, and it moves, and there's some ups and downs in it. But what we know is that sometimes after you're a follower of Jesus for a while, some weird stuff can set in. A spiritual apathy can set in, and whether it's on circumstances or culture or something going on in your own life or sin, but we just know it can, or a lethargy kind of in your faith. Another thing that can set in is there's this kind of need and this desire to kind of hunker in and increase desire for my own comfort and my own safety. And listen, we're all going to have those kind of parts to our following of Jesus, but sometimes when those feelings and those phases set in, and they stay for too long, you sit in a spot that is really the opposite of what Jesus is calling you to be in and to do. See, everything in our society right now, coming out of this pandemic and all the political stuff and all the cultural stuff, right? There's this kind of call, this siren scream for us to hunker back and this desire for kind of getting safe and my own security starts to really creep to the top of my list of what's most important. But what if that's the actual thing that's putting some of us into this camp of spiritual apathy, and some of us into this camp of spiritual lethargy, or some of us in this camp of kind of having this walk through sleepwalking faith that isn't going anywhere? What if Jesus is actually calling us to be something completely different from that? For the next 5 weeks, we're going to dig into the parables of Jesus. I think what you're going to find is this: very surprising about what Jesus is actually looking for in his followers. So let's dig in. So I want us all to do this together, okay? Whether you have your phone or a paper Bible, if you have an app on your phone, use it. But I want all of us to turn to this one because we're not going to put it on the screen. Matthew 25, okay? Matthew 25. Now, Matthew's a fairly easy book to find. It's the first book of the New Testament, so thumb through it. No shame. They don't have all the books memorized, but this is your chance to learn and go and do that. So bring it to Matthew 25. Now, in Matthew 25, we're going to sit in actually verses 14 to 30. This parable, this story of Jesus. But it's really important that we put all of this in context, this story in context. Now, this is the parable of the bags of gold, or the parable of the talents, and kind of depends on what version that you have. But this is a story, but it's set very specifically in a context, okay? So if you're in Matthew 25 right now, I want you to just flip back to the beginning of 24. And here's what we see in 24. Well, in 21, back to chapter 21, Jesus is coming into Jerusalem, right? And he's getting ready to get there. And in 24, Jesus is telling these stories, and he's talking to his disciples, he's talking to the people, and it's very focused on the end times. It's very focused on what to expect at the end. It's very focused on this kind of theme of waiting and what's next. See, if you're a follower of Jesus, we've got this really strange dynamic that we live in, okay? Because here's what we know. Though we live on this earth, it's not our home, right? This is a temporary residence. Our real home is in heaven. And though what happens here is crucially important, it's all based on Him. So we kind of live on this idea that, yes, I'm here and I'm not a citizen, I'm a citizen of heaven, but I've got a role to play and I've got a mission to accomplish, and it matters a lot. So we live with this kind of one eye on earth and one eye kind of on heaven, like what's next? And we live in this, not a tension, but we live in this balance of going, someday He's going to come back, but today, this is where I'm at. Someday He's going to return, but today I'm on mission for Him, preparing for that return. And so we live in that kind of a paradox of already but not yet. And so there's this watching and this waiting for it. So in chapter 24 of Matthew, he's Jesus Himself is saying, hey, he's talking about the end times, and then he gets down to verse 30, and he says, then will appear the Son of Man in heaven, and then all the peoples of the earth will mourn when they see the Son of Man coming on the clouds. Right? So he's given this idea, this future picture, this someday. Then he gets to 38, and he says, hey, but about that day and hour, nobody knows, okay? Nobody knows. And then in verse 43, and then in chapter 25, he walks into these stories about what it means to live in this kind of in-between, this waiting. While we're here, while we're waiting, what does Jesus expect of His followers? And if you flip ahead just a page, what you're going to see is this. In chapter 26 is the Last Supper. He gets anointed. Judas betrays Him. He predicts his denials. He's in Gethsemane. He gets arrested. So this is literally on the cusp of that final days of His life. On the final days of His life, Jesus tells these stories. These stories. And let's look at the best example of them, I think, in Matthew 25. Let's look at verse 14. So here's what Jesus says. He says again, okay, so what will the kingdom be like? What's it going to be like? He says again, it'll be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. To one, he gave 5 bags of gold, to another 2 bags, and to another 1 bag, each according to his ability. Okay, so let me just stop there before I go any further in the story. Let me just kind of point things out as we go. All right, so this picture is, and this is a picture of Jesus kind of talking about Himself. He's that man going on the journey. What journey is He going on? He knows, right? He knows that in just a week or so, He's going to be arrested and crucified, and then He's going to be buried, and He's going to rise again, and then He's going to ascend to heaven after a while, right? So He knows there's going to be this period where He's going to go on a journey. And while He's gone, what's He doing? He's entrusting His mission. He's entrusting what's His to His people, to His servants. He's entrusting them. And notice what He says. To one He gave this much, to one He gave this much, and to one He gave this much, okay? And then He qualifies it with this. He says, each according to his ability. So let's just for a minute, sit on that for a minute. What He decides to give each of us as opportunities or responsibilities or gifts, what He decides, it's His decision. And He knows us better than we know ourselves. And there's too many of us that spend our time thinking, man, I wish I was that, or I wish I was that, or I wish I had that, or I wish I had that gift, or I wish I could do that, or I wish I was more like her, I wish I was more like them, I wish I was more like him. Listen, stop that, okay? If you're a follower of Jesus, you stepped over the faith line, here's the deal. He has entrusted you with something valuable to Him. Whether it's 5 or 2 or 1 is irrelevant. What's relevant is this, that the King of the universe entrusted you with something very precious to him. And he gave it to you specifically. He gave you these opportunities. He gave you this responsibility, and me very specifically, okay? According to who we are and how he's wired us. All right, so let's go back to the text now. Then he went on his journey. Verse 16. The man who had received the 5 bags of gold went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 bags more. So also the one with 2 bags of gold gained 2 more. But the man who had received 1 bag went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. Okay, so these 3 servants all had equal opportunity, and each of them took their own unique approach to it. So the first 2 guys, here's what they did. They took what they had and they invested it. Okay, they invested it. They had this opportunity, they had this, and they said, I'm going to invest this for my king. The third one said, hey, I don't want to lose it. I don't want to screw this up. So the third one dug a hole and hid it, which wasn't uncommon, right? Was not uncommon in those days. So the approach of each of these 3, while they're waiting for Jesus, while they're in this kind of in-between time, right? The approach of these 3, Jesus talks very specifically, and we get a clue into what Jesus is looking for in his followers. Okay, so look at the next verse. 19, it says this. So after a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them, right? So on the very surface level, the master comes back from his long journey and it's very surface, but on this spiritual level, this parable level, of which Jesus is talking about himself. After a while, he comes back and he settles his accounts with what he gave to his people. And the man who had received, it says in verse 20, the man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I have gained 5 more. And his master replied, and I want you to hear this, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Then the man with the 2 bags of gold also came. And master, he said, you entrusted me with 2 bags of gold. And see, I have gained 2 more. And in verse 23, look what the master says, word for word again, right? Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things. I'll put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Okay, so just catch this. 5 on a return of 5 and 2 on a return of 2 are both 100% return. What they started with is irrelevant, but what they did with it is the issue. That's what's relevant. And so the master comes back and he says, you did great. You took a risk for the kingdom. You did what I expected you to do. You took a risk. Well done. And now let's go to the next, let's keep going the story and go to the next one. And in verse 24, the man who had received 1 bag of gold came. And master, he said, I knew that you're a hard man, harvesting where you've not sown and gathering where you've not scattered seed. So I was afraid. And I went on and hid your gold in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you. And his master replied, you wicked and lazy servant. So you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed? So just time out, question mark here, because you think, was that what Jesus was like? No, that's not what Jesus was like. Jesus says, this is my question for you is, you think I'm that way? This is the way that you think I am? And so since you think I'm this way, you took what I gave you and you hid it in the ground because you were afraid, because you didn't bother to know who I am or what I'm like, and that's what you did with it? You see, this is the kingdom principle, right? This is it. If we're going to have influence, we have to take what God has given us and we've got to do something with it. And to live a life of fear and hunkering down and believing things about Jesus that aren't who Jesus really is, we're going to end up where this guy ends up. Now just listen to what he says now, okay, and follow this. So his master replied, go back to that. His master replied, you wicked and lazy servant. So you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. And in verse 27, he says, well, then, if that's what you thought, right? You should have put my money on deposit with the banker so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. So take the bag of gold from him and give it to the one who has 10 bags. For whoever has will be given more, and they will be given abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. And throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness where there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. All right, so just let's put our minds around this just for a minute. Let's just think about this just for a minute. In this thing called the kingdom, in this place that we live right now, where it's someday he's going to come back, but today we're here, and while he's away and while we're awaiting his return, he's entrusted us with opportunities and with influence. And the real issue is, right? The real issue is, did you take the risk with the kingdom opportunity that you were given? You see, here's this Jesus who knows us better than we know ourselves, and this Jesus, here's what he likes. He likes to entrust us according to however he wants to. And what he's looking for is, did you take the risks on the opportunity, the kingdom opportunity that you were given? Now, from this one parable, and when you start reading them, you're going to see this all the way through. What is Jesus looking for? What's he looking for? Here's what he's looking for. People who will simply ask the question, is it worth the risk? And they're going to be willing to take the risk and the kingdom opportunities that are presented to them. We have a kingdom currency, right? We do. But do you want to know if it's worth the risk? Do you want to know why sometimes we fall into spiritual apathy and we fall into lethargy and we kind of fall into this spot of kind of treading water or just spinning our wheels with Jesus, or we get in the spot and we want to look for what's the next thing I should do or go to or what's the next thing I could and we ask the question, what's God really want from me? And I don't know what he wants from me, and we get in these spots and we sit still. And the reason that we get there is this, because we forget this is what Jesus is like. He's gone. He's coming back. And while he's gone, he said to you and me, I'm entrusting you. I'm entrusting you. Are you willing to take the risk? And here's what we learn. When it comes to the risk, Jesus expects it. He expects us to take the risk and step into the kingdom opportunity to grow his kingdom and to bring his influence to people and to our property and to our platform, right? He expects us to step into it. He expects it. When God puts a kingdom opportunity in front of each of us, there's always risk, okay? There's always going to be risk. But here's the expectation of Jesus, that you will step into the risk for the kingdom. That whatever opportunity he puts in front of you, you will step into it. He expects us to. And not only that, but he rewards it. Go back to this text and look what he says to those two. One had 5 and one had 2, right? And here's what he says, well done. This is Jesus. What's he rewarding? What's he saying? Yes, this is what I want you to do. Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things. I'll put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Is it worth the risk when a kingdom opportunity comes? Jesus actually expects it. Jesus actually rewards it. He says, listen, if you'll be faithful in this one little step towards your neighbor, I'll give you more influence. If you'll be faithful in your one little step with your property and your stuff, I'll give you more influence. If you'll be faithful this one little step into using your platform for me, I'll give you more. And every time he expects it, every time he rewards it. And look what it says at the end of both of these. Come and share your master's happiness. This actually makes Jesus happy. When you and me, who are the followers of Jesus, get out of the treading water phase or just being kind of floating in the stream, and we step into every risky adventure, whether it's with the people in our little Iowa, right? Or whether it's with the property, the stuff that God's given us, or whether it's the platform that we have in our place of work and in our families. He expects this. And this is worth the risk. And my friends, it's not just this one little parable, right? It's not one. This theme, right? Is it worth the risk of stepping into the adventure? Is it worth it? The answer is yes. This is consistent with Jesus. This is consistent with what he says. I'm going to show you just one spot. We can go bang, 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 3 in a row where the same principles ring true. Now, we're going to leave Matthew now. I want you to go to the book of Luke, okay? So go to Luke chapter 10. So it's Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Go to Luke chapter 10. Luke 10. Now in Luke 10, it's a bang, 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 but the principles remain the same. So we're not going to be able to kind of just dig through all of these kind of detail-wise. But just write these down so this could be part of your study this week. So you go to the sermon study guide, you walk through that, you walk through the Matthew 25. Then other parts during the week or in your small group, you pull up Luke 25, which is Luke 10, 25, which is the Good Samaritan. Some of us are familiar with that story. And then right after that, in verse 38, is the story of Mary and Martha. Okay, that's not a parable, but it's the illustration of what Jesus rewards. Okay. And then right after that, in Luke verse 1 here of chapter 11, he gives kind of the shortened version of how to pray, and then he gets into the late night need. Okay, so these are the three. And I want you to look at them with me because I want you to see these principles ring true, okay? So you get to Luke 10, and it starts with the big story of he sends out the 72, and they risk it, they go out, they risk it, and they get rewarded. But we get to the parable of the Good Samaritan, and let me start it, then I'll shorten it up for you. So in verse 25 of Luke 10, it says, on one occasion, an expert of the law stood up to test Jesus. And teacher, he asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? He says, what's written in the law, right? So the guy's trying to test him and love the Lord your God with all your heart. And then Jesus tells a story, and he says, well, what's that look like? What's it mean to love my neighbor? What's that mean? And you get down to verse 30, and he tells the story. A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, they beat him, and they went away, leaving him half dead, right? So there's a trail between these two cities, Jerusalem and Jericho, and this guy gets robbed, and they take his clothes, they take his money, they beat him up, and they throw him in the ditch. In verse 31, it says, a priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side, because, Jesus says, again, remember what he's saying here, what's the risk? Here's the opportunity. And so too, it says in 32, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, he passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was. And when he saw him, he took pity on him. And he went to him, bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to the inn and took care of him. And the next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I'll reimburse you for any extra expense that you may have. Right now, the twist of the story is the Levite and the priest are the guys who are supposed to see this opportunity to take advantage of it. And the Samaritan, the Good Samaritan, is the enemy of the Jew. And so the actual thing would be the Samaritan about to be the one who shuns and walks by, so I'm not going to do it. But what's he do? He sees the opportunity and he takes it. And he goes farther. He risks all of this. He risks his own money on this one. He risks his reputation among his friends on this one. And he goes to it. And at the end, Jesus says in 36, which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? And the expert replied, the one who had mercy on him. And then Jesus says, go and do likewise. See, here it is, right? Go and be like this Good Samaritan. What did this Good Samaritan do? He took a risk on the opportunity that could have cost him and did cost him, but he took the risk. And what's Jesus say? This is how you ought to act. This is it. He expects it. He rewards it. And it makes him happy. Okay, so that's just one. Now look right after this, okay? Right after this, at the home of Mary and Martha. And remember, they were his friends. And as Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. And she came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister had left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me, okay? So easy setup. Jesus and his crew are coming in. The Martha is just busy doing all the preparations and getting all the food ready, which is a good thing, right? It's a good thing. It's not bad. In fact, they need to eat and stuff needs to be ready and the house ready and the house should be clean, right? So it's a good thing. But Martha's sister Mary, instead of helping in the kitchen, sits out on the floor of the living room listening to the teaching of Jesus, just wanting to be around him. Martha says, Jesus, come on, can't you tell her to come and help me do this? And in 41, Jesus says, Martha, Martha, you're worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. Mary said, there's one thing that's more important than anything else, and that's for me to listen and be with Jesus. She risked the relationship with her sister. She risked the ire of her sister, right? She risked the talk that could be about her. Why isn't she in here doing this? Why isn't she in here helping us? But what did Jesus do? He expects us to take that risk of what's the best thing to do. What's the most important thing? He rewards Mary with his words. And what's it do? It makes him happy. You could just see him looking over at Mary and just go, but she's chosen the best thing. The best thing. Okay, one more quick one. We'll end with this, okay? So you get to chapter 11, right? This is all in a row. Then this is the kind of the mini teaching on the how do we pray, right? The Lord's Prayer. And then this next story, right? There's another story, okay? And then it says this in verse 5 of chapter 11. It says, so suppose you have a friend and you go to him at midnight and say, friend, lend me 3 loaves of bread. A friend of mine on a journey has come to me and I have no food to offer him. So just a little bit of context here. So hospitality in the Middle East in the time of Jesus, that was just a huge thing. And it would have been shameful and embarrassing. And it would have been one of the worst things you could do was not offer hospitality to friends who roll in, okay? Not offer hospitality. So this guy doesn't have any bread. So he rolls over to his friend's house and says, give me 3. And he says this in verse 7. And suppose the one inside answers, don't bother me. The door's already locked and my children and I are already in bed. I can't get up and give you anything, okay? So no, here it is, right? Here's the setup. What's Jesus expect? What's Jesus going to reward? And what's going to make Jesus happy, right? What is it? Okay, you listening? Here it is. I have a need and I'm going to come to this, my friend, and I'm going to get a need. And then the picture is come to God with prayer, right? That's the idea behind it. I'm going to risk bothering them. I'm going to risk the comfort of my family because we all live in one room, you know, and we got to step over and if you knock and I go get bread out and everything's going to wake up. We probably had livestock in the house with us and they're going to wake up. It's just going to be a mess. I'm not going to help you. Listen to this. In verse 8, I tell you, even though he will not get up and give you the bread because of friendship, yet because of your shameless audacity, he will surely get up and give you as much as you need. So what's the reward? Jesus says, this is what I expect. That you take the risk for the kingdom stuff. Jesus says, I'm going to reward that every single time. And then Jesus says, this is what makes me happy. My friends, listen, we're going to spend these 5 weeks, the next 4, and we're going to ask this question, is it worth the risk? And we're going to ask this question of the three big kingdom currencies that we have: people, and our property, and our platform. And we're going to ask, does Jesus expect it? Does Jesus reward it? And does it make him happy? And if you want to live a life with Jesus that's a kingdom adventure, this is the road we take. If you're tired of sitting where you're sitting, if you're tired of being the spot you are, then we're going to go. And we are going to risk it with every kingdom opportunity that Jesus puts in front of us. Let's pray right now, all of us together. So God, you're good to us, and we're grateful, and we give you all the glory. And Father, forgive us for getting ourselves in a spot where we're stuck, where we're not growing, where we're risk averse. And God, draw us out to this great adventure of the kingdom. And while we wait, we do what you expect and you reward and what makes you happy. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen.